I'd like to introduce Mark Ott. He is with the Deputy District Attorney's Office, and he will be speaking on the fentanyl campaign and safety fair. So, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Again, my name is Mark Ott. I'm a Deputy District Attorney. I head up the Major Narcotics Prosecution Unit for the District Attorney's Office. So that's my role. I was asked to present, and I'm sorry if I'm looking at the other screen because I'm a technological idiot, so apologize for that. But I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to give, I think, that should do it. This is a presentation that my boss, the elected Anne-Marie Schubert, gave to the Board of Supervisors, kind of detailing what we're seeing from the District Attorney's Office and what we're doing in response to it. And it's obviously, it's just going to be a huge problem. It doesn't go too far till you read in the news about all the seizures. I can tell you in my caseload alone in the last, I would say 2.5 months, I've filed on 3 cases, all of which combined is probably over 150,000 fentanyl pills. So it's alive and well, and we're just seeing so much of it. The pills are going for about $20. They can go a little less, a little higher. So it's super profitable for the cartels to move it up here and the dealers. So we're just seeing a ton of fentanyl. As Lori had mentioned about the numbers of deaths, they're tracking right at our homicide rate, and just a little bit below 1 month, the fentanyl deaths were a little higher than our murder rates. So, but they're tracking almost even with each other. This is obviously up to July 21st. The recent ones have up to, I think Lori said, about 88. So obviously a huge problem. And while it definitely hits from I hope you guys can see that, as you can see from our demographics, and again, we're getting this information from our coroner's office that we work really closely with. You can see the demographics are clearly weighted in probably the 21 to 31 type area or age area, but we're hitting people, of all demographics, up to 60s and 70s. So it's not just a teenage problem. It's not a young adult problem. It is a community-wide problem. We had our lab, as I think Lori had mentioned, we'd had our lab look at some of the pills that are coming through, and we're finding that for the first 6 months of 2021, about 75% of our oxy pills that we are getting in the lab, and these are seized under some type of criminal investigation, are counterfeit, and of those, 92% have some or have fentanyl in them. And I hope you can see the photographs between the real and the fake pills. I mean, they're almost indistinguishable. So, these kids like we just talked about, some kid thinks he's getting the real Adderall, the real Oxy, because they look so similar, and they're just not. One of the things, and kind of going out the deaths things, one of the things that I want to personally work on, and I was just talking with my supervisor today, is we've got a pretty good handle on fentanyl deaths, just because we have access to the coroners, and the coroners have to constitutionally mandate what is the cause of death of these individuals. What we don't have a good handle on is the fentanyl overdoses or opioid overdoses that are non-fatal. And I think, obviously, you've got to imagine that's a huge number. So we're trying to work with local jurisdictions to hopefully get a better reporting mechanism for that. So hopefully we can do that. I think that'd be a really good effort. Certainly something I'm going to try to work towards. This picture right here that's in front of you is a case that I'm currently prosecuting. guy named Adam Blackstone. He was partying with a 15-year-old girl, gave her some fake narcotics that had fentanyl in it. She woke up in the morning. Well, she didn't wake up. In the morning when everybody woke up, she was dead. And then a year later, on the year anniversary of this young lady's death, we did a search warrant, hit this guy's house, and he was still dealing in the blue ones up at the top are the Oxy, and then the Adderalls and the Percocets. He had over 5,000 pills here. So even when he's involved in what I believe to be killing a young lady, they don't stop. They keep going. Some of this, again, I apologize. This was more geared towards the Board of Supervisors presentation. But one of the things that we're doing and the response that we're doing, so in the courtroom, anytime a narcotics or a fentanyl sales case comes across my desk, and almost all of them come across my desk because of I'm heading up the major narcotics unit, is we're giving an admonishment to those individuals who sell fentanyl and give them what's called it's a Watson admonishment. And typically Watson admonishments are done in DUIs. And so we tell somebody, hey, you just got convicted of DUI. Should you drive under the influence in the future and kill somebody, you are now on notice that there's a risk, you're assuming that risk, and you're disregarding that risk. Why that's important is because then you can file what's called implied malice murder cases. You can actually file a second-degree murder charge on somebody if they know, appreciate, and disregard that risk. So what we're doing in the courtroom right now is anytime somebody pleads or is found guilty to a fentanyl-related offense, then we're giving this Watson admonishment and says, hey, look it, dealing in fentanyl is inherently dangerous, and you do it again and somebody dies, we can go after you on murder charges. So we currently do not have a murder charge pending on a fentanyl sales types of case, but it's something that we're setting up the future so that we can use the criminal adjudication to reflect the dangers of what these guys are doing. Because like the Adam Blackstone guy, he don't care. I mean, he just woke up next to a dead girl, and a year later he's got over 5,000 fake pills on his person, and he's got a gun and $10,000 in cash. So so that's what we're trying to do and go after them. Also, I'm going to start working with some of the local jurisdictions to have the officers understand and investigate these things at the outset. You can imagine that when an individual shows up dead, the coroners, we don't get the labs back for several months to show that it was an OD from fentanyl. Cause of death is a little later. And by that time, a lot of the investigation abilities are lost. So what we're trying to do is educate our law enforcement to recognize these types of issues so that possibly, and if justice serves, this is something we can go after and perhaps make a murder case out of it, or some type of elevated criminal charge out of it for people that are selling these things, knowing that they're killing people. The other aspect that the district attorney's office is involved in is getting involved in this public awareness campaign. And why Anne Marie Schubert, my boss, was given the presentation was to try to elicit support for these public outreach. A lot of the things that Lori and other people are going to talk about. We're getting involved in educating kids in the schools, different PSAs, all the stuff we've all talked about. The one pill can kill and the kind of those type of information. And just that public outreach. I think one of the next steps that we're going to do in that outreach is, I believe, the district attorney's office is heading up, or at least participating in a fentanyl awareness safety fair at the state capitol on November 6th in the North Lawn from 11 to 2. It's going to have all kinds of individuals giving information to the public. There's going to talk about how Narcan and can save your life, and have kits to give away, more of those education types of systems. So while my role is obviously as a prosecutor is to hold those people accountable and do justice as they're dealing this poison to people in the public, the other arm of it is going to be educating people. So hopefully we can keep them from taking those fake pills that have fentanyl in them, keep them from doing it in the first place, and recognizing, the characteristics, the signs, and try to keep people from doing that. So that's kind of how the district attorney's office is working on this issue right now. So I think that did that. So that's, did it turn off? Okay. So yeah, that's what the district attorney's office is doing. Any questions or anything?
Okay, so Mark, I see in the chat there is one comment from that states, Mark, this is from AR, Mark mentioned overdose admissions. I recall Dignity Health shared their ER admission data at a coalition meeting last year, and that maybe that is a resource to connect with.
So admission data from hospitals?
Yes.
So
yeah,
Mark,
and I'd love to get that information. I know medical providers have in the past been hesitant to give that information to law enforcement because they don't want law enforcement investigating those people and incarcerating them. And so I know there's been a little bit of tug of war in the past. Obviously, with the laws changing in California and that's not the intent. Is we'd like to be able to see where this issue's coming up. And if there was a hot spot, say in Kaiser South, we'd know that there's somebody running around with bad dope down there, and we could direct law enforcement if that is the proper way to go, or at least address those. So any information that we can get for that is helpful, but there has been a certain, butting of heads, so to speak, in that regard.
And Mark, I just wanted to share, it's just off of memory, but I do recall back in the day when we used to meet in person at the Opioid Coalition meeting, Lori had a guest on from, God, it was a health system. I want to say Dignity, and they did share some of, was it Dignity?
It was Dignity Health, and she's since retired now, who provided that, but it was never real-time data, which was the challenge for us. It was always like a year behind. And so, like Mark mentioned earlier, there's some things in play right now, like OD mapping that we're trying to explore, and that's being considered here in Sacramento County, but we need more buy-in to have that real-time data. That OD map, if you've never heard of it, check it out. I think it's odmap.org. I'm not quite sure, but if somebody wants to check that for me. We are working with Steve Ferry with HIDA, High Intensity Drug Trafficking area, around trying to get this promoted here in Sacramento County. So discussions are still happening, but yeah, you're right, Myra. We did have some data that was provided through hospital systems, but we want something more real time.
Yeah,
and
one of the, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I figured this is kind of the benefit of this, is we all have a piece of the puzzle. And it's just a matter of sharing, just through these meetings to kind of, get a better picture and pull our resources together.
Right.
So that was just the intent. I hope that came across.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things I was talking to, I have one of my neighbors is a battalion chief for one of the local fire departments. And I was asking, because EMT and fire department rolls out there and they see somebody who's OD'd, what's the first thing you're going to do? Is they're going to give them Narcan and then get them to the hospital. So I was asking the question, I'm like, is there any way you could monitor how many times or when a fire department personnel, some type of EMT, administers Narcan? And all you need to know is the date of it, the location of it, and was it get it. Now, you wouldn't necessarily know it was all fentanyl. It could be other opioids. And two, there's going to be some times when EMTs gives it because they don't know exactly what it is and might as well give them Narcan because it's, you know, so you'll get a couple false positives. I personally think that if you were able to track that data, you'd have a really good picture of how many times people are ODing on an opioid. And you could use that data to the you know, the decision makers and the stockholders on, you know, what's the best way to move forward on that. I'm still in some discussions and talking with some of the local fire departments about how to do like maybe a pilot program for that, like on a certain battalion. But I think it'd be an easy way to get really helpful data. So anybody that can dovetail on that or have a better idea of that, I'm all ears. So.
And Andrew Mondanza with SubUnit will be speaking about that a little bit to add to that in his presentation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So another question in the chat for you, Mark, is what is the average length of sentencing for fentanyl cases?
So right now, fentanyl, if you're transporting fentanyl, it's 2, 3, or 4 years of what's called county jail prison. That's runners. So the guys are the mules. The guys that are selling it, actually for possession of sales is a lesser sentence than transportation for sales. So, so the max you're going to get is 4 years. And of that, because it's county jail prison, means that you have to cut it in half. So they'd serve half of that in custody and half of it out of custody. And then for the time that you do in custody, you get 50% credits. So working the math, if someone gets a 4-year sentence, which is the max, and I'm telling you, if the guy doesn't have priors, nobody gets the max. I mean, judges are always mitigating these things to lower term or middle term, and that's the law. I get it. But even at the max, person's going to do 1 year of actual time. Now, if they have guns, if they have strikes, you know, there's other enhancements that take place that can increase that. So a gun would add 8 months, a strike would double that up. You cannot 25 to life anybody on a drug charge. So even if you had 100 strikes, you're still going to just double it up once. So, but the sentences are not great. One of the things that's really interesting, I find really interesting, is that we have weight enhancements for all narcotics except fentanyl. So for example, I got a case where I just hooked a guy for 136 pounds of meth, okay? I can get a 20-year enhancement now on that. So it'd be 4 years plus the 20. That's still split and then split again. So the max he's gonna do on 136 pounds is 6 years actual time. There's none of those enhancements for fentanyl. And one of the problems is, like that guy, the picture I showed you of Adam Blackstone, those 10,000 pills didn't make the weight enhancements because the pills are so powerful and they're such in small quantities. You know, it's not like a kilo of meth, it's one single pill. And so with 1,000 pills, you could potentially kill 1,000 people. And it still only weighs maybe, I don't know, 200 grams. I mean, it doesn't weigh that much. So one of the things that I personally think is we should start looking at these weight enhancements for fentanyl that reflects the incredible dangerousness. However, obviously, our legislature would have to pass that. And if history is any indication, they're not increasing penalties for drug-related offenses anytime soon. But that would be a way to at least have the potential for incarcerating these people who are moving a lot of dope, if we had those enhancements. That was a very long-winded way of answering a very simple question.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Also in the chat, there is a link to the One Pill Can Kill SAC.com. and which has the fentanyl events. And so everyone, please, check out that website for more information on the fentanyl awareness events.
And Janet, I'll just say that this is a partnership between the Sacramento County DA's office and the Sacramento County Substance Use Prevention and Treatment Unit of Behavioral Health Services with Sac County Health Services. And there will be about 30 vendor or resource tables at the event. Sac Fire will be giving out fentanyl to answer some of the questions. And anybody who wants to volunteer can certainly reach out to me. And I'll put my information in the chat about volunteering or handing out resources, anything you'd like to do to help with the event. And this will be one of many events, I'm told, that will occur throughout Sacramento County and all the supervisors' districts at some point. But we're starting with Supervisor Desmond's district.
Okay, thank you, Lori. And then another comment, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. It's from Jamin Martinez. It says, I'll add to Mark's information and advise that fentanyl in powder form is becoming more common and presents separate challenges. So
Yeah, and that's Lieutenant Martinez. For anybody that don't know, I work really close with him and his people. Yeah, you're seeing a ton of it just in powder form and not in the pills. So really, really dangerous because it could just, kind of like talcum powder just comes out and people are starting to, smell it or breathe it in, and it can be really super dangerous. So thank you, Lieutenant.
okay. Well, thank you, Mark, and for your presentation.